Hey guys, Patrick here. And today, I'm going to be ranking martial arts that I personally have done. Now, I'm not going to be doing this like how everyone else typically does this, which is like how good is it for the street or the cage. I'm just going to primarily be ranking it based off of my own personal experience with the style. Like, how much fun did I have with it? How much did it like affect or alter my fighting style for the better or for the worse? How much of it do I still implement in my current fighting style today? As well as just my general thoughts and opinions on it. Because when you think about it, people have different reasons for doing martial arts, whether it be competition, street defense, just looking for a community, looking for a hobby, that sort of a thing. Um, and everybody has a different body. You know what I mean? Like some people are shorter, some people are taller, some people are thinner, some people are thicker. So there are certain styles that just more or less suit different body types, different people. And so, you can't make the blanket statement of, oh, this martial art is superior to this martial art for everybody in general. Now, I get most people sort of make a generalized list of like how this would be for like 70% of people, all that stuff. But everybody has like a different journey through martial arts. And so that's just why I personally will only be sort of quantifying the martial arts that A, I've personally done, and B, like how they have affected me personally. Okay? So, and we're going to be going in chronological order to when I did them. So, we're starting off with wrestling. When I was very young, my grandfather was a wrestling coach. He was a high school teacher, and he was also the one of the head wrestling coaches. And he taught me and my brother how to wrestle from a very young age. Now, neither of us competed in wrestling because our mom wouldn't let us because she thought it was violent. But, that being said, our grandfather did teach us wrestling from a very young age, made us do it for a couple of years. And I really, really like wrestling. I found it very fun, personally. And on top of that, I found it insanely helpful when I was doing both Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and when I was getting in street fights when I was younger and dumber. Helping me avoid getting taken down, helping me scramble back to my feet when I was in both Jiu-Jitsu and street fights, right? Unfortunately, I was slacking on it during my during the time that I did MMA and while I was doing Wing Chun and all that. But that being said, wrestling has been nothing but a huge benefit to my personal style. I find it amazingly fun, and I think it's a really solid style. So for wrestling, I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10, right? So moving on, again, next chronologically was karate. Now, when me and my brother were, again, grade school age, my mom signed us up for karate classes. Now, I mean, I don't really get her logic of wrestling was too violent and karate was not, but whatever. So, we both learned karate at a very young age. And I could not tell you what kind of karate it was. But the owner seemed like a cool guy. How it affected me personally was, I used karate blocks. I found them pretty helpful. Outside of that, and I used a few karate kicks. Like I used the front roundhouse kick and the front side kick to help myself in sparring sessions. I've never used it in a fight. I don't think. I primarily only used it in kickboxing spars. I guess I never really trusted it that much to use in an actual fight. So it didn't affect my style too heavily. My brother uses it. My brother's more of a karate fighter than I am. He used it in fights, and he was very successful with it. But me personally, I guess it just personally didn't work for me all that well, just because I'm thinking, and I'm like, well, how often do I use the techniques that I was taught in my everyday, like in fights, in spars, and in lighter spars? I use karate techniques. In fights, outside of like just the karate blocks, like the basic like up, middle, down block, I don't think I used it at all. And as for how much enjoyment I got out of it, personally not too much. So, on my very subjective scale, all right, for me, karate got a 4 out of 10. Next up is boxing. Now, my grandfather taught me how to box when I was 12 years old, and this was the first martial art I'd say I took seriously. This was the first one I went like all in on, learned the ins and outs of, really, dove headfirst into boxing and like stayed there for a very long time. Now, boxing definitely influenced my style. I would very much say that it is my base style, right? I am a boxer first and foremost, and everything kind of just builds around that. But that being said, I don't use a lot of the stuff that I used when I was purely boxing anymore, now that I'm like kind of doing, mixing it together in a overall package style. Like, I don't use head movement nearly as much. The footwork that I use is vastly different because I take grappling into account now. There were certain tricks with the gloves that I would use to like parry around and move the gloves around. Obviously, that's very boxing sport specific. So obviously I don't really use any of that stuff anymore because it's so specific to boxing directly that, it no longer applies to my style. And while I did used to be super into boxing and stuff like that, I have since been so burned out on it. Like, I hardly ever practice like just pure boxing anymore, just because that was just so much of my training for the longest time that I just got super burnt out on it. So I don't really find it that fun anymore, but at the time I absolutely was in love with it. But where I stand right now, how it applies to my style and all that stuff, it's far less than it definitely used to be. That being said, how much did it help me in street fights? It helped tremendously. It really, it was like practically the thing I used in most of the street fights that I got into when I was younger. I use it in like all my striking sparring sessions. It was an invaluable tool to definitely say the least. So my final score as of where I sit right now is I give boxing a 7 out of 10. Next up, we have Wing Chun. Now, anybody who knows my content knows that I definitely regret doing Wing Chun. From the time I was about 15 to the time that I was about, just turned 19, I was really into Wing Chun. I did all that stuff, and I would hazard to say that I was probably more Wing Chun than anything else during that period of time. And looking back at the way that I was, and compared to even how I was before I started Wing Chun, compared to how I am now, I definitely faced a regression as a fighter. Like when I was doing Wing Chun, I wasn't using footwork at all. I wasn't working angles at all. I wasn't feinting at all. My striking just plummeted stylistically. It was so bad. I do, after thinking about like a lot of stuff, I do think that the hand trapping stuff might help me out on the ground when I'm doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, grappling on the ground, stuff like that. So I do think that there is some stuff that from Wing Chun that I still actually involuntarily use to this day. Did it help me in street fights? I mean, honestly, yeah. You know what I mean? Because the people I fought against didn't know how to fight, and I was, able to employ some of the techniques against them. So do I still use some Wing Chun now? Like, I somewhat hesitate to say yes, but like, I really think about it and I'm like, well, there are some stuff that I do specifically on the ground, off my back, that's like Chi Sao relevant, right? But that's literally about it. I don't employ Wing Chun striking tactics at all. It literally only ever comes in to my grappling. So I would have to say probably right now I would give... Oh, also, fun aspect. I forgot to touch on that. Wing Chun was not fun to practice. It's really not fun whatsoever. It was a slog, for sure. So I would overall give Wing Chun a 3 out of 10. Next up is Taekwondo, the brief time that I did Taekwondo. Now, I did not enjoy it. There is not much, if any, Taekwondo in my style. I would say, like, when I'm purely striking, like doing kickboxing stuff, I would probably say my footwork is closest to, like, a Taekwondo style type of thing. But I don't use many Taekwondo-specific moves, especially considering that a lot of its kicks are very similar to karate. I did not have fun training it, and obviously if I didn't use any of my karate stuff in street fights too much, I like that goes even less so for Taekwondo. So personally, again, this is just my personal experience with this martial art, my style based on it, my experiences with it, my fun with it. I would give Taekwondo a 1 out of 10. Because it never applied to me in any street fight. It never applies to me in any spar. And it wasn't, I don't even look back on it with any sort of fondness. So I would just have to say, for me, Taekwondo is a 1 out of 10. Up next, we have Judo. I very briefly also did Judo, but unfortunately I couldn't keep up with it more due to the school than due to anything that I saw wrong with it or anything like that. So, Judo, thinking about it, I definitely did some Judo, like, foot sweeps and trips and stuff in my Jiu-Jitsu. I definitely have also done it sometimes in kickboxing when they've, like, allowed certain types of stuff, like for you to sweep the legs and stuff. I guess those are closer to, like, MMA stand-up spars, but still. And I've used it in street fights before. And I'm not talking about any of the ground stuff, because the ground stuff we didn't really get into that. We were just doing some trips and some throws. And on top of that, I did find it pretty fun, and I still use some of those techniques now. So I would definitely say, personally, Judo is a definite 6 out of 10 for me. Up next, we have Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And for anybody who, again, has watched my channel, you would know that I'm very, very biased towards Jiu-Jitsu. I would definitely say that it is my number one favorite martial art. I just love it so fucking much. So don't expect a biased opinion on this. Or an unbiased opinion on this. So, Jiu-Jitsu, I definitely focus very heavily on. I would definitely say that it is the bulk of my martial arts training these days. I love it with a passion. I have insane amounts of fun doing it. The techniques that I use, I haven't gotten into street fight since learning Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but my confidence has definitely gone up since learning Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And on top of that, obviously when I grapple and shit like that, my grappling is like skyrocketed way up due to jiu-jitsu techniques. And I feel very confident that if anybody were to like take me down in a street fight, I could easily get back up. I could easily submit them off my back if I really wanted to. I really feel jiu-jitsu has given, and is that confidence unearned? Maybe. I don't know. I don't get in street fights anymore. I'm not a fucking kid. But the point is that I really, really believe heavily in jiu-jitsu. It is like what all my training goes towards now. I know before I said I was definitely boxer based, and that's true for my striking, but my grappling like based game is all based on what I learned in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, me personally, due to how much I love it, due to how much fun I have when I do it, as well as the confidence that it gave me, that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu literally gave me the confidence like no other martial art. It literally gave me the confidence to become a firefighter. Like, that is how much Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has helped me personally. You know, like, it's helped me more than just in terms of fighting. It's helped me in terms of my life. You know, and how much I love the techniques and how much I believe in the techniques and how much better I am as an overall fighter due to jiu-jitsu. Specifically, jiu-jitsu for me is a 10 out of 10. 100% for sure. Absolutely love it. Up next, we have Muay Thai. Now, when I think about my striking game, obviously, again, we're in that category of I've never used it in a street fight because I haven't been in street fights pretty much since I studied Judo, right? I really like it. I wouldn't say I love it. I would say it's fun as hell. I would say that it definitely helps my striking overall in terms of my kicks, because before, like, you know, I was using more karate style stuff. Now I feel like very confident in my kicking skills, in my kicking abilities, in my in my elbows and my knees and all that stuff. You know what I mean? That was like sort of lacking before. So I definitely feel like it has brought up my game. That being said, you know, again, it's not really the focus of my striking, because my striking is more definitely super hyper focused on my hands specifically. But, you know, Muay Thai has like helped to bring everything up to a whole nother level. So for me personally, with how much fun, and this it gets a whole extra point just because of how fun I thought it was. If I was just like kind of saying how much of my style was based off of it and stuff, I would probably give it a 6 out of 10. But just for the fun aspect of it, I give Muay Thai a 7 out of 10. And finally, we have the last martial art that I have practiced in any sort of recently, or at all really, in terms of like, you know, all the different martial arts that I practiced, and that was a Screama. I have done a Screama for a couple months. And I'm just going to be honest, it hasn't really affected my style whatsoever, even in terms of weapon fighting. My weapon fighting is not, like, severely altered by the stuff that I'm doing in a Screama. I still don't use, like, a Screama knife techniques. I use, like, I guess what you could call, like, prison knife techniques, because I believe in that saying. I forget who said it, but it was like, if you want to look at how people fight with knives, look at prisoners. So I don't use any Screama techniques for knives. Obviously, I don't fight with sticks because I don't carry sticks around with me, and we don't spar. So that's another problem I have with the school entirely. I don't think the classes are structured in an especially fun way. So as for me, I'm probably, and again, keep in mind, this is just talking about me, my experiences, and my personal own fighting style. I'm going to give a Screama a 1 out of 10. I really don't use it in terms of sparring at all. I doubt I would use it in any terms of actual fighting. And again, like, the classes are not the funnest, so I don't really look forward to going there. But, alright guys, that has just been my thoughts on the martial arts that I have practiced. Please let me know what you think about the martial arts that I have talked about, if you've trained in any of them, any sort of opinions down in the comments below. I'm Patrick, and I'll see you next time.